Hi. In this video we'll be doing the C# lab on while loops. So I've already created the form here before I started the video, so you guys can just copy the names if you're following along. But what I have here are 2 text boxes, 4 labels, and 3 buttons. So this text box is called starting bell text box, so you can see the identifier name right there. This text box's identifier name is months text box. This label is, the identifier is ending balance label. So these 3 labels don't have any identifiers. Then there's 3 buttons at the bottom: calculate button, clear button, and exit button. So that's it, so we'll just go into the code. So you can, if you're following along, you can just pause and create those. Where is the toolbox? There it is. Why does it say nothing to show? Oh yeah, because I'm in the code, okay. Okay, so one of these was created by accident. So we have, I don't think we're going to do the clear and the exit button. Actually, maybe we'll do the clear button. So we just have our using statements, namespace, just some random name, same partial class. This is extra, like I accidentally clicked it when I was making the form. So we're going to go back actually and then click the calculate button. So I'll click the calculate button here. Okay, so we'll have a local constant. So constant, or CONST, decimal, interest rate, points to 0.005 m. Remember, decimals have an M at the end. To specify money, like M such as currency. Not always, but I think that's what it's usually for. Then we'll have some local variables, so we have a local constant and some local variables. Decimal balance, int months, and then int count points to 1. So here we'll say if. Int dot try parse, passing in months text box, dot text, and then comma out months. So what are we doing here? We're saying we're going to try to pass months text box dot text of the string to an int named months. So when the app runs, what is it? Nope, I messed up, sorry. Apologize. So we should start with the first text box first. Something happened to the keyboard, I think. That happens often in Rider for some reason. Okay, so we have, instead of that, we'll have if decimal dot try parse, passing in starting val text box dot text, comma, so the first parameter is starting val text box dot text. Second parameter is out balance. So what's happening here? We're saying if. So we're saying, okay, well, we want to try to if, which means, so if, and then we're calling a method here. So then we're saying if, I believe it returns -1. I kind of forgot, but I think it's -1. If it's false, so I think it returns true or false. And if it's true, then the value is stored in balance. I think I actually kind of forgot what it returns. But what's going to happen is it's going to try to pass. We went over this in the notes. Sometimes I just forget exactly what the return value is. I'm not sure if it tells you here. Excuse me. Okay. So yeah, so it returns true or false. So try parse returns true or false. It's defined as a public static bool. Oh, sorry. So it stores 0 in the balance if it failed, if it's false. Otherwise, it returns a value. Okay, so that's a little tricky to remember. So it's not -1, it's 0. So that will be a question for sure on your test. If you're taking it in school, that'll be a test, like a university question for sure. They're gonna ask you what try parse returns. Like, is it a Boolean method? So it's gonna ask you. They're just gonna be like, what does try parse return? And you're gonna be like, well, it returns a Boolean, true or false. If it's false, it stores 0 in the out variable, and if it's true, it stores the value trying to be converted in the out variable. That's the correct answer. If you put -1 or like it returns an int, then you'll get it wrong. So just remember that. So this one, so it's trying to pass starting val text box dot text, which is a string. So it's trying to pass this string as a decimal named balance. Then we'll have a nested if. This time int.tryparse, passing in months text box dot text comma out months. Same idea, except we're trying to pass the string months text box dot text as an int named months. So remember, try parse returns a Boolean. So if it returns true, the value that is stored, that is trying to be converted, such as an int, is stored in the variable months or whatever out variable you have. Let's just say out val. If it's false, the out val variable val would store 0, not -1, but 0. So if you say -1, you'll get it wrong. So usually they are -1, so this one's a kind of a tricky one to remember. So while, and also it usually doesn't return true or false. It usually doesn't return like true, false, and a value stored. It usually just returns true or false, or like 1, 0, or -1. So it's not, this is kind of like, it returns two different types, so it's hard to remember. In programming itself, they usually don't have methods that return different values. They usually just return one type, either a boolean, an int, for example, like pretty much that's it, or a string or something. So this one can be a tricky one to remember. So while, then we'll have while count is less than or equal to months. We'll open the loop. So remember, this is going to continue to loop until this condition is false. So the condition is while count is less than or equal to months. Then we'll say balance points to balance plus interest rate. We're going to call it the constant interest rate times balance. We'll say count points to count plus 1, or you could have did count plus equals 1, same thing. They're both the same. I prefer this one, to be honest. It's like normal math, rather this isn't. That's kind of like a computer science math. So count points to count plus 1, or count plus equals 1 is the same thing. So we're just incrementing here by 1. Which means add 1. We'll talk about using the ++ modifier coming up. Pretty sure we could have just said count ++. But it's always best to just go with this. Safest bet is just change it like this. That's what I would do. So just display the ending balance. So here we'll just say, actually, so that's in the while loop here. So that's it. That's all we want to do in the while loop. Just 2 lines, and then we'll break out of the while loop. Then in the inner if, I think we have 2 here. So in the inner if, we'll say ending balance label dot text points to balance dot toString, passing in the formatting string C for a currency. So ending balance label dot text points to balance dot toString. I think that's this one. Ending balance label will point to the balance at the end. So then outside of this, if, actually sorry, no. First nested else, we'll say, why did it do that stupid thing? Why is it doing that now? It's writing the brackets for me. I have to turn that off somehow. So then here you want to say message box dot show. If you want a dialog box to pop up here, so we'll say message box dot show invalid val for starting balance val. It's hardly letting me scroll over. That's okay. So then here, outside the outer if, we'll nest this too. Actually no, this should have been invalid val for months val. Sorry. Then outside here we'll have the nested else here. Else message box dot show. Invalid val for starting val, balance val. That should be all. Okay, let's talk about it. So what exactly are we doing? What's happening here? So we have, so remember the calculate button. So an event handler listens for an event. So an event handler listens for an event. So then it's lit, which means it's waiting for an event to occur. That's what listening means. So once the calculate button is fired, which means it's the user clicks the calculate button, then at that exact second, this code happens in like a fraction of a millisecond, so whatever, 1,000th of a millisecond. It's a constant decimal interest rate, or even faster than that, I think. I don't know the exact, you get the idea, like it happens really fast. So then constant decimal interest rate. So once the button is fired, then we say, okay, well we want to create this constant, these three variables. So we say, okay, so if this method returns true, because remember this is a Boolean method, so if this method returns true, then it'll proceed. If it's false, then it'll say, okay, well, invalid val was invalid val for starting balance val, because in that case that means this starting balance was not a correct value, or maybe it was the wrong type. The starting balance should just be some kind of some kind of decimal in this case. So if it's true, which means that it was converted successfully, then the balance gets stored in balance. The string here, so remember we're trying to pass the string starting val textbox.text as in decimal named balance. So if it's true and it worked, then balance is now storing the data. We'll step into this if, then it'll try to do the same thing for months text box. So num of months. So it's going to say, okay, then we're going to try to pass the string months text box.text as an int named months. And if that was true and converted successfully, and months is now storing the data as an int. It's going to say while count, which is initialized to 1. So while 1 is less than or equal to months. Let's say months is 12, just as an example. Then we'll call balance, which is basically 0 at this point, I think. So balance points to balance, so balance points to 0 plus interest rate times balance, whatever balance was from before. Interest rate is a constant. Then it's going to increment count. Now counts 2. We might actually need to step through this. Okay, let's try to set a breakpoint here. I'm going to run it in the debugger just to show you guys how the loop works. So I'm going to save it. I don't have, didn't get that OBS Studio yet, but I think we just need to, because my recorder only gets either the GUI or the code. That's just Windows 10, the Windows 10 recorder. Excuse me, so I'm just going to click this debug button. I don't think we need to actually see the GUI to be honest. Actually, I don't know if that's going to work. Let me try something else. Not that, I mean, is that not running? There's an error. Label 2_click, okay. Excuse me. Unless I just messed up the names. I'm just gonna double check. Excuse me. Sorry, I need some kind of hot liquids right now. So we have label 1, 2, 3, which we didn't use. Starting bal text box. Months text box. Ending balance label. Calculate button. Clear button and exit button. So that should be fine. I think it's something in the backend code, so I'll have to delete something here. So I'll go to program or form1.cs. Then form1.designer.cs. I'll click that. I'll click this Windows Form Designer generated code. Now I'm going to look for some red lines. Some kind of errors in this. This is it here. Okay, you can't really see it that well with this theme. It's right here. It's very hard to see that in this. Can't even see this very well. Can't see that either. Just one more look through. The theme doesn't actually underline those. It just goes red, it doesn't underline them. I believe it doesn't, because usually in the other, that's dumb, but in the other themes it underlines the errors completely. This one just highlights them as red. So it almost looks like it's just normal code. So I'm looking for anything red or an error, which I would just comment or delete. Seems to be fine now, so let's just try that, see if it works. So we'll go to, back to, where is it? Form1.cs, just that one. Save it. Save all. Then we'll click the debug again. Debug icon in the top right corner. See if that worked this time. Says succeeded here. The time, that's the current time as well. Not sure if anything's going to happen here, because it needs other input to start first. That's what I was thinking. We'll see if it does anything. It's saying, okay, well, you want me to start here, but you didn't enter anything for the value, so how am I supposed to go? So it's okay, so it's waiting for that. So let me stop that. Stop that. I'll change the breakpoint here. I'm going to move the breakpoint from there to here instead. Put it here. Yeah, it's not going to work there. So it works there. Okay, sorry, so let's just continue with that. I just want to show you guys how the loop works, because me explaining it will be confusing. And it's good to look at them in the debugger anyways. So let's just get that set up here. Okay, so let's try to just click that debug icon now. So I'm just going to enter some data in the form, which you guys won't be able to see because the recording won't be able to catch it. But I'll just start with a balance here, just some kind of random number. Let's just okay. Well, let's go with something crazy. So what's going to happen is I'm going to just click the debug. It's waiting for data here, so I'm just going to hit. So what's going to happen? I'm just going to enter a bunch of data. And I'm just going to hit calculate. Okay. Now we got all this threads and all these different processes here, which is kind of confusing with GUI, especially in Android 2. There's a lot of different processes and threads. This is just our main thread. Okay, so it's just the main thread. I think they call it the worker thread. Well, I'm not sure if we'll go over threads in C#. I think we might actually. We'll talk about that later on, I think, like far later at the end, if anything, because this gets complicated. It's actually pretty easy, but the theory of it is complicated. Usually you don't want to overload the main thread with too many processes because it can crash. Like you want to have different threads for different things. I'll try to explain that in Android more if I can, or later on in C# if I can, but I had a really good example of this in Android, which I'll try to upload as well. It's really easy to create a thread in Android too. You say thread points a new thread, and then you just call your thread. It's pretty easy. It should be something similar in C#, so we'll have a look here. So basically, this is just the form1.calculate button. So these are actually the controls, I think. a form has probably built-in controls. For example, you can click and all that. It's reactive to a mouse up, a mouse down, perhaps the mouse scroll bar if you have one, right click, left click, stuff like that. So some stuff is already built into the form, which you can't see, but this is the one that we define, so this is what we can see. So then I'm just going to click the one that we define. We don't need to go over this. This will get too complicated, that's like advanced. So we'll just go with the control that we define. So I believe these are all controls here in our main thread. So this is our calculate button underscore click, calculate button underscore click right there. That's the one we defined. So this should return to the form, refer to the form here, which will have its own variable, so that can get confusing. But a form will have its own built-in variables that the Microsoft developer designed, so that can be confusing as well. So we won't focus on the form, but that's the form. What we'll focus on is the variables that we created, which is a constant, interest rate with which isn't shown. That's dumb. Is it not shown? Why isn't it shown? Is it in another thread? What would I do there? Static void main. Okay, this is... We didn't have that, did we? No. We might be coding this main at some point later on. But basically we have... Oh, what was I looking for? Wait, I was looking for that constant. I don't see it here. I'm not sure if constants are just not defined. It might be... It's a local constant, so it should be here. This. No. Interest rate, let's just go to I here and see if it's there. IME. Thought it was this, but that's internal handle. Okay, no, it's not in there, I guess. I'll admit this is advanced debugging, but I'll try to explain it the best as I can. The reason why it's advanced is because there's a lot of Microsoft developer variables built in. And I don't see the constant. Why? That's dumb. I should see the constant. It's not showing it for some reason. Why is it doing that? Maybe because constants don't change. So it's like, well, I don't need to change it because you already know what it is. That could be it. So balance is 0. Count is 0. We know that because if you just declare them, they get initialized to 0. We talked about that earlier on. Months, so we have balance, months, and count. Sender is the the parameters, object sender and event args e. We don't need to focus on those right now. So I'm just assuming they didn't put the constant here because they should have though. I can ask ChatGPT and ask why it's not showing up or if it's hidden or something. I'll ask it later. It would take me too long to sign in and ask right now. For next time though, I'll try to remember. So for now, just remember the interest rate is 0.005 M and it's named interest rate. Okay, so we have, so now in count is going to, right now it points to 0. I'm going to step over. Now that count is going to change from 0 to 1. There you go. So now if decimal.try parse starting bal text box dot text out balance was going to try to convert the starting balance text box, which we can't see here. Why is that? Oh yeah, because it's a different control. So it's going to be hidden in here somewhere. So remember we have a button down here, which you can't see. Right there, calculate. Then we also have our text boxes that we use and the label. So this one was called starting bal text box. Starting bal text box. Okay, so if we go down here, don't see it here. Or is it because this is open? It could also be because we don't have an event handler actually. We have it defined, I think because it's user defined, sorry, it was drag and drop, not all the variables are showing up. That's what I think that's what happened last time. We can test that and see next time, actually not next time, when we create those objects. So we'll just keep it for now, we'll just assume that we have basically we're able to access starting balance text box.text. So if decimal.try parse passing in this, what's going to happen is that it's going to try to pass whatever's in the starting bal text box, which is, we said, oh, sorry, I didn't tell you, but it won't even let me pop it up. I think that it's like glitched out. Even if my recorder could catch it, if the Windows 10 recorder could catch it, it's not letting me show what I entered because that's stupid as well. So this debugger has its setbacks, but I entered like 10 million. So which means it's going to try to convert that string to an int. Basically, when you enter a string, you don't put quotes because the text box is just automatically known to be a string type. So it's going to try to convert that number to an int, I guess, sorry, a decimal, not an int. So I'll step into that. It might take me into built-in code. Method to step into. Let's go with step over then. Then step over. Okay, sorry. So as you can see now, when that happened, I was able to receive that balance 10 million and it pointed it to balance, which is a decimal. It tells us that it's a decimal. It's saying now decimal balance points to, because we had an out here, sorry. So it's basically saying that, okay, it was converted successfully because, well, it's not telling us that it was converted successfully. It's showing you that the decimal, was converted to this decimal. It doesn't say string, so which means that the type was converted. That's what we wanted. So we were able to step into the nested if rather than step out to this else. Therefore this was true and it entered the if. Don't need that much space. Okay. This can be a long process. If you've ever seen my data structures videos, sometimes this takes like 3 hours. This is just a short code though, so it won't take that long. So the same thing here is going to try to do the same thing for months textbox.text, which we entered. Well, I entered 12. It's going to try to store 12 in months, so I'll step over. As you can see, months now points to an int, which is 12. So then I'll step over here. It's looks like C# stops the debugger at the brackets, whereas other languages don't. They just continue to the next statement. So sometimes you have to click twice. Well, actually, you have to click twice. Now it's going to say while count is less than or equal to months. So what's count? Count is 1. Months is 12. So count is less than or equal to months because 1 is less than or equal to 12. Therefore, here we'll step in. So now balance, which is this decimal, points to balance times interest. Sorry, balance plus interest rate times balance. So balance points to balance plus interest rate times balance, so we'll step over that. So now balance got some interest here. So now count points to count plus 1, which means count's going to increment from 1 to 2. So now when this happens, this is what I wanted to show you guys. So basically, this bracket here, since it's a loop, it doesn't go here. It doesn't proceed to the next statement. A loop loops back up to the condition to check the condition again. So if I click step into, it's going to loop back up to the condition, basically what I said, and then it's going to say, okay, well now count is, because in a for loop, which we haven't done yet, it'll increment. You have to assume the increment before it enters a loop because it increments while it steps in. It's a little confusing. But in this case, a while loop, we have it incrementing before it jumped up to the condition. So now it already incremented. As you can see, our variable here changed. Changed, so count points to an int, which is 2. So while 2 is less than or equal to 12, that's going to continue another 11 times, or whatever, 10 times. To watch, I'm just going to click, I'm just going to keep stepping through this. Whoops. Which could take a while. See now 3. 4. I'm going to keep just clicking through till it gets to 12. You guys get the idea. See what's happening here? I'm just clicking. It's going to keep processing the loop 12 iterations, pretty much. 11 or 12 iterations. I think 11. Might be 12. So now it's at 10. So while 11 is less than or equal to 12, is 11 less than or equal to 12? That's correct. It might actually be 13 iterations if it's equal to. So 13, so while 13 is less than or equal to 12, is 13 less than or equal to 12? 13 less than or equal to 12. It's not, because 13 is actually greater than, or it's greater than 12, so the loop will end here in this case. So now the ending balance label.text points to balance.toString. So the ending balance label.text points to balance, which is a decimal. ToString is going to convert it to a string, because we need it to be converted to a string, because ending balance label.text is a string, and we're going to format it as a currency. It says right here, balance.toString return string. You can view that somewhere. Okay. Basically, it's showing us that's how it looks. That should be the end of the code. because the else blocks weren't hit. That's the end. So in the GUI, which you guys can't see, but I'll tell you guys what's going to be there, since you should understand the code now. Where did the code go? What is this? Okay. That's built-in code. Okay, so we have, so what's happening here is we have that balance hopefully you guys could just see that. It was like some value, almost 11 million, so that was the ending balance. And that's the end of the program. So hopefully that makes sense. Thanks for watching, guys. If you guys like the tutorial, you can like and subscribe to support the channel for more programming and investing tutorials. So in the next video will be, there was a clear, but we don't need to really do that. We just set everything to an empty string for that. So for the clear button, we just say starting val text box. I guess we could just do it quickly. Getting kind of long here, but I'll just double click the clear. So clear button will basically clear the text boxes, so we'll say starting val text box dot text points to an empty string like that, semicolon. Then we'll say months text box dot text points to an empty string as well, and then starting val text box dot text points to an empty string as well. Then we'll reset the focus here at the bottom. Whoops, I messed that up here. This should be ending ending balance text box dot text points to an empty string. No, sorry, not text box. Ending balance label points to an empty string. Then here we'll have starting val text box dot focus, which means that it will set the focus to starting val text box at the end. Starting val text box. So at the end, you should see a blinking dash here showing that the focus is on the starting balance. Basically, where it's ready to take input, it'll show you that flashing line, right? That's pretty much the focus. So that's everything. So thanks for watching, guys. So in the next one, we'll enhance this GUI with a text box, I think. A list box, sorry. I might have to just start it over again. Or I'll just try to add to it. So thanks for watching, guys. Hope I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.